This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Welcome back to Justice Pending, the podcast where we dive into unsolved cases and keep the pressure on for justice. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan. And today we're covering a case that takes us back to 1988. Two teenagers, a small Texas town, and a mystery that has haunted their families and the community for over 3 decades.
That's right. This is the tragic and still unsolved murder of Sally McNelly and Shane Stewart. It's a case that's been tangled in rumors of cults, police theories, and frustrating dead ends. But as recent investigations show, there may still be hope for answers.
Yeah, and we want to thank our listener, Adra, for bringing this case to our attention. If you have cases you want us to cover, be sure to reach out.
Before we get into the case, I wanted to give a shout out to our friends at Texas Monthly who did an excellent 7-part podcast on this case in 2024. It's called Shane and Sally. If you're looking for a deep dive into the twisted, unsolved murders, I highly recommend it. All right, let's get into it, Susan.
All right, so let's set the scene. It is July 4th, 1988, Independence Day. We're in San Angelo, Texas, and the fireworks over Lake Nasworthy are the big event of the night. It's the kind of gathering where families and friends get together, kids run around with sparklers, and young couples sneak away for a little alone time.
That's exactly what Sally and Shane planned to do. The two had been in an on-again, off-again relationship, but at this point, they were back together.
Yeah, Shane's dad remembers giving him a hug before heading out that night. He promised to be home by 11 p.m.
But he and Sally never made it home.
The next day, July 5th, when neither teen returned, their families grew worried. They started searching everywhere in town for signs of Shane and Sally. And then something chilling happened. Shane's prized Chevrolet Camaro was found abandoned in a parking lot near the lake.
And it wasn't just a case of teens running off. The windows to the Camaro were down, the keys were still in the ignition, and there were food wrappers inside the car. Plus, a note from Sally to her parents saying she was unhappy.
But no one believed she actually ran away.
No, it really didn't add up. And this note, it really felt off to everyone who knew Sally. In all the media reports at the time, they questioned the authenticity of the note.
And despite a massive search, nothing turned up until 5 months later.
It's November 1988, and hunters stumble upon human remains in a pasture near Twin Buttes Reservoir.
At first, they weren't sure who they found, but as investigators searched the area, they uncovered even more remains close by.
It was 2 bodies, Shane and Sally.
And they had been executed.
They were both shot in the head with a shotgun.
Imagine being their parents, knowing they had spent months hoping, searching, only to find out their children were left in a field.
Yes, it's really terrible. And the families had, combed the area. They would drive around to all the local hangouts. They were searching fields, forests, everywhere that they could think of. And it's just heartbreaking. And knowing what we know about the scene, it seems like someone, for some reason, wanted Shane and Sally dead. So let's get into the rumors and theories in this case. And there are plenty of them, including cults, revenge, or something else.
Yeah, remember, this is happening in the late 80s. And this is a time when the satanic panic is gripping the country. So, that's, of course, we're getting swept up in that timeline there.
Yes, I was a young child at this time, but knowing about so many historic cases from the late 80s, people were seeing the devil in everything at that time. There were, a big popular game was Dungeons and Dragons. There was also heavy metal. Music was really popular. And, everyone was getting swept up in this. And many businesses and activities were being accused of being satanic cults and being, devil worshippers. So this was a common theme around the late 80s.
Yeah. And in San Angelo, the rumors were running wild at that time. Sally had reportedly been involved in a group that dabbled in occult rituals. And Shane, they say, was trying to help her leave it.
Right. So there's even a story about Shane and Sally turning over a gun to police a few months before their deaths, saying that it had been used in a murder by someone, in their friend group. And so it was just this really strange detail that people have wondered, is this related to their deaths because of like the close proximity that I believe it was Sally who was listed as the actual person who turned the gun over to the San Angelo police. And, it's not every day that someone walks into the police station and says, hey, I have this gun that I think was used in a murder and I want to turn it into you. So this was noted. This was an unusual, activity. And it became even more unusual and noteworthy when Shane and Sally turned up missing and then, of course, were later found dead.
Right. And was there a murder it could be tied to? I mean, this is just such a strange case, a strange detail, and, kind of does connect them to a group.
Right. So there were several unsolved murders in San Angelo at the time, and police, later said that the gun didn't have a connection to the occult, or, as far as I know, it hasn't been connected to a specific unsolved murder.
Right. So, yeah, then I guess if not a cult, what is it? I get the case went cold for years. Shane and Sally's case, that is, with all these strange details popping up. Decades passed. And then in 2017, there was a spark of hope.
Right. So a man named John Cyrus Gilbreth was arrested during a routine traffic stop. And his girlfriend tipped off police that he was involved in drug trafficking, which led them to search his house.
And what they found was, in a word, chilling.
Yes. So they found personal writings about murder, audio tapes marked SS, which immediately made people think of Shane and Sally. There was also a lock of hair, a fingernail, and biological material that looked like blood. And in fact, John had known Shane and Sally. He was part of their friend group back in the 80s.
Oh, that is so creepy. But it sounds like that's the break in the case everyone might have been hoping for, waiting for.
Yeah, you would think. And that's really how it was portrayed in the media. Like, we finally figured out who did it. We have this evidence. It just needs to be tested. But, basically, case closed, right? But after the story came out with the initial arrest and the news that there was evidence going to be tested for DNA, it was suddenly radio silent.
Huh. I mean, yeah, if the DNA didn't match Sally, Shane, nothing tied him. I mean, that's it, right?
But yes. So they ran all the tests, and when it came back, it was not a match for Sally or Shane.
What a letdown.
Unknown DNA. The tapes, nothing had any relevance to the case.
I mean, also just very creepy. Whose was it then?
Oh, I know. No, it is really disturbing that he has someone's hair, someone's fingernail, what appears to be someone's blood. It's just not these two people's. So John Gilbreth ended up going to federal prison on unrelated gun charges, and he spent a couple years behind bars, and then he was released. So
wonder what happened with the drug trafficking. I mean, that's all the girlfriend knew about. That's
right.
I mean, I guess she got more than she bargained for. But he actually wasn't the only suspect.
That's right. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, Texas Monthly's podcast called Shane and Sally is a deep dive on this case. In it, hosts Rob D'Amico and Karen Jacobs uncovered 4 names that authorities had been looking at for years.
They called themselves the Lost Boys, not the vampires from the 1987 movie, but a real group in San Angelo.
Yes, so they apparently got inspiration from the 1987 movie of the same name, The Lost Boys, and they started wearing, black trench coats and wearing sunglasses all the time, and generally taking on the persona of the Lost Boys in the movie. And Shane and Sally went missing, in 1988, so a year after the movie had come out. And the 4 suspects named were Steve Schaefer, John Gilbreth, Jimmy Burnett, and Heath Davis.
So these were people with connections to the town, connections to each other, and according to police, potentially connections to the murder.
Right. So despite the suspicion, no one has been charged. And Jimmy Burnett actually died in 2013 in the Philippines.
Still, the families have never stopped searching for justice. And over the years, Shane's dad, Marshall Stewart, never gave up. He conducted his own investigations and has just never let this drop from top of mind.
Yes, he would go on his own patrols. He watched suspicious people, and he would turn over, his findings to police to give them a new direction to look in, someone to potentially question, new evidence to test. But unfortunately, to date, nothing has yielded anything, resulting in a grand jury or an arrest.
Wow, nothing came of the 4 suspects, huh? That's got to be just heartbreaking for his family. And, we know after years of frustration, Shane's father finally had to let go of Shane's prized Camaro, the car he loved so much, because it just became too painful.
Yeah, it's so sad just to think of, his dad, and of course you still have his bedroom, you have his car, and, you have to just be kind of frozen in time, waiting for him to come back. Right. Yeah.
I mean, we know he won't, but it's just the fact that there's been so many stalls in the case. The case is still open. Texas Rangers continue to review it, and authorities believe more than one person was involved.
Yes, there have been all sorts of theories, presented over the years involving those 4 people. Sometimes it involves 2 of them working together. It involves, one, committing the murder, another helping to hide the bodies. So there's definitely room for this to be a case of multiple parties being charged. But after 30 years, they need something solid. They need a confession. They need a witness who's willing to come forward. They would really benefit from DNA that matches Shane and Sally, on evidence to be able to bring closure to this case.
Yeah, and it sounds like one of the suspects, suspects has already passed on himself. So, the longer this case goes on, the fewer people might remain around to be of assistance in solving it.
Yeah.
But Claire, so what do you think happened?
So I do think they're on the right track with these 4 suspects. I think, there's a lot of evidence against Jimmy Burnett, which is the friend that died in the Philippines over a decade ago. And he allegedly had actually confessed to multiple people, including an ex-wife, and Heath Davis, another one of the 4 suspects, has said that Jimmy Burnett confessed to him. Of course, he has a motive to say that, because it wouldn't be him. It would be Jimmy Burnett. Other people say Heath Davis, once confessed to doing this murder. So there's a lot of theories out there. I think that that likely the correct suspect is in the crosshairs already, but it's one of those really frustrating cases where they don't have enough to actually charge any one person. They have a lot of suspicion that goes in different directions. And so it's almost easier if you just have one suspect, right? But
Right.
they know that if they brought the case to trial, they would have this alternate suspect theory that, if they brought Heath Davis to trial, my goodness, everyone, from his defense team would be pointing at Jimmy Burnett. And, if they can't bring a dead man to trial, so he's kind of the perfect boogeyman, for anyone who would get charged in this case. So I don't know. I hope that something breaks through. Hope springs eternal. I never give up, but this is a really tough one.
Yeah. And I guess there is no statute of limitations on this, correct? Because it's
Correct.
murder or homicide, and it is still open.
That's right. The only, thing to note really is that you obviously can't try, charge, and convict someone who's already deceased for a murder. So that
Right.
is, the legal loophole for Jimmy Burnett in this case.
Right. The posthumous accusations don't fly. Got
Right.
it. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. After all these years, it's really time for someone to talk.
Yes, justice has been pending long enough.
If you are listening and know anything about what happened to Sally and Shane, please contact the Tom Green County Sheriff's Office at 325-655-8111.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Stay safe out there.
Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.